Aotearoa just wrapped its annual film festival, so here's what I watched, and what I thought, in the order that I watched them. Let us commence the viewing. For the uninitiated, in 2007 the New Zealand police made a series of armed raids to apparently put down supposed paramilitary training camps in the Wops of Aotearoa. Hundreds of police were sent into small communities to search houses and confiscate property. This was not the first time Tūhoe was attacked either. Almost 100 years earlier, Roa Kenana was arrested for advocating against Māori conscription into the First World War. Police were found to stage evidence that suggested Māori fired first, resulting in the deaths of 2 Māori. It's always weird watching a movie that is almost trying to be based on a true story. The phrase, "this is a response," is uttered so regularly that I wondered at times if parts of production ended up unironically reinforcing this, and the phrase being used after the fact. To be fair, most movies are obviously dramatisations, and we're supposed to take it all with a grain of salt, but casting Tameiti to play himself in that case is interesting, to say the least. Nevertheless, this film nails New Zealand's unique airiness and timeliness found in stuff like Whale Rider and Boy. We have a gorgeous country, but it can also feel lonely, and I think this film does a great job of showcasing Tūhoe as it is, or more so, just rural New Zealand. This movie is tense, and I think rightfully took the stance to distance itself from the real facts in order to get across the emotions relevant with the raids. There is a sense of rawness here that I haven't felt in a local film for a while. The performances do their jobs. Cliff is great, but this movie is about that feeling more than it is about any particular character. Please check it out. Hopefully it gets a wider international release, because I would like to hope that everyone watches this. This movie was really funny, in a good way. In typical Cronenberg fashion, half of this movie is so ambiguous that you could gain quite a few different interpretations. In a world where people no longer feel pain, violence becomes the new sex, and some people begin to not need the normal confines of human consumption to survive. I love films that depict a larger world at work too, with the story we follow only being a small bite of it. The movie just lets everything exist without feeling the need to explain absolutely everything, although that will mean you'll probably scratch your head on multiple occasions. The performances here are exceptionally awkward, and I love seeing the film allow itself to just hold on the weird silences. Vigo is stellar, and I would have liked to see more of Kristen Stewart actually. This movie is presented really well, the music ripe with intrigue, and the cinematography making the weird shenanigans even weirder. This was a very unique experience. I can't say I'll ever watch this movie again, but I'm glad I did. Wow, this was something else. Such great spectacle, and such intimate exploration of a couple's journey for answers. A love story of 2 volcanologists who are absolutely devoted to their craft. Maybe a bit too much. With what looks like hundreds of hours of footage, a wonderful story has been brought to the screen. To be honest, I don't think I'm sold on the narrator. I'm not sure if it's the intonation or the dialogue itself that I think undersells a lot of the points, even if some of it does hit really well. I don't have too much else to say. One of the most wonderful documentaries I've seen in a while. The end is heartbreaking, terrifying, and also very thought-provoking and loving. A story everyone will take something away from. At the premiere, I couldn't help but get emotional when the director got up and very clearly stated this film was a love letter to the Takatapui community of all types. The general premise of this film is simple. A young boxer struggling with the relationship with his father finds a new side of himself when he meets a queer Māori boy. I hate to be a downer, but this movie hits a lot of cliches. A lot. The general arcs of the characters, the way scenes play out, and some lines spoken you could very much guess on your own. I think what saves the story is that the Māori character does provide a fresh element some might not have seen for a story like this, but I don't know if it saves the film from mediocrity. Tim Roth does a great job with what he's given, but I can't help but think some of the discoveries regarding his character could have been implemented more fluently, rather than adding a scene that's sole purpose is to make us rethink our opinion of him in the most generic way possible. The lead is fine, he does his job well. As for the Māori love interest, this is a lovely story about being takatāpui, and does have a heart to it, but I don't think there's a lot of sustenance here. I never planned on seeing this initially. Must have slipped my mind during research, but damn am I glad I saw it. I was never familiar with the shorts, so I honestly had no idea what to expect, other than the fact that I absolutely adored Disaster Piece and was excited when I saw he was scoring. Marcel, well, he is a shell, and he wears shoes. After his family disappears, he's left with his gran, and a temporary house stayer decides to film their lives as Marcel navigates this world alone. The documentarian has a few things to learn too. This movie is adorably cute. Wholesome, funny, gut-wrenching. This movie is every little quirk that everyone can enjoy. Cutesy and innocent without being cringe and annoying, and as a fan of mockumentaries, I love how this film explores the documentary medium. This is a very innocent film, and isn't trying to say a lot, but it does everything it sets out to do, and has something in there that I think literally everyone can enjoy. The epitome of absurdist humour, this film doesn't make any sense while having me rolling around on the floor for half its runtime. Probably more than that, to be completely honest. I didn't know what to expect with this film, but somehow it went beyond my wildest imagination. Smoking Causes Coughing follows a superhero team that go away on a vacation for team building, but honestly half the movie has nothing to do with that. Bedtime stories that go on for 20 minutes, otherworldly shenanigans, this movie really does have it all. Nothing fits, yet everything does at the same time. The movie drags on its bits for way longer than I think it should have, but the payoff is usually worth it. This movie is not going to be for everyone, and it is stupid humour, but if that's your cup of tea, you're going to have a great time. I know I sure did. A local story about an insomniac who becomes obsessed with an ASMR streamer. You know, I can start by saying I don't think I've seen something like this before. For the incredibly low budget this film had, wow was it good to look at. The sound was great too, although some of the music editing flailed around in places and the repetition of tracks was very noticeable. Sound design in all other departments was pretty on point. The 4:3 ratio I wasn't on board with until the director explained his reasons after the film ended. Personally, I find it a bit pretentious, but it does do the job it intended to, drawing your focus to the core subject matter and closing in your peripheral vision. A very intimate and almost surrealist love story turned thriller. I was along for the ride, until the end kinda kept going on, but there is some real interesting stuff here. Keen to see what else this guy makes. Beautifully poetic, but missing a lot of context. This doco dives right into the emotion, but I think it fails to take the time to explain a lot of the foundations of its own story. Telling the story of a state ward and the effects his upbringing had on his family, it's an intimate tale, with some real raw performances, and some scripted moments that really do add quite a lot to this film. You can tell the creators came from a fiction background, and I do love what those sequences add to the overall story. This could have easily used another 20 minutes or half an hour though, as it's not until like halfway through that you get somewhat of a clear idea on what's actually going on. Perhaps some narration would have done a lot to help explain the scope of this issue. While the emotion is greatly felt here and makes this a worthwhile watch, I just kind of felt confused more often than I should have, which is something to bear in mind. This film is a statement. 8 short stories interwoven with the underlying thread being indigenous tales from Aotearoa and Ahitereiria. Wow, there is some extremely good stuff here. I love the idea to cut back and forth between the short stories too, rather than just play them out one by one. But ultimately, there's not a hell of a lot of thematic cohesion between them, other than they're indigenous. For the most part, that's fine, but some of these shorts don't work without the cohesion of the others, and there are a couple which needed further exploration to make contextual sense. There are some stellar ones, however, that work super well on their own. I love the overall diversity of subject matter and tone. There was one film which had some odd editing choices, but I'll let you discover that for yourself. Honestly, everyone should give this a watch. You cry, you laugh, you feel warm, and it's just great to continue to see this kind of representation. It delves into past trauma, but also looks toward the future and the role our culture plays in it. So yeah, maybe go check some of these out if they come your way. Or don't. I'm not your mother.